student cohort. They're all studying to become music teachers. I'll take their photos out once we're done with the session. But I wanted to show you how online, we did a talking circle yesterday online because the students really wanted to speak about what was going on and how they are doing. And so I both trained them in doing a talking circle, and then we actually did the circle together. It was voluntary. This bowl is actually live, so it takes you to a sound, and then we created little elements, and we actually got to talk by moving the talking piece virtually and seeing each other. So this was just the mechanism that I used. It was both virtual. Yeah, you got it, whoever moved that. The anonymous armadillo, that's what it says on my thing. And so you can move yourself around. I wanted to show you that. And then I wanted to show you this slide, which was an activity that we used to actually preface the talking circle, where it was a game around agree, disagree, strongly, agree. And this is something I've used with high school and middle school students before. Yeah, where you could create a statement like, I like chocolate ice cream. And then I sort of move myself to agree. No, I would put strongly agree, you know? And so in this way, we could really have the voice of the circle come up that is less anonymous. So I just wanted to show you that as ideas. And then if you look further at the slide, here's some really great storybooks. And I know Matthew will be presenting later, uses a lot of storybooks in his classroom. And these are some of the storybooks that I shared with my students about activism, about the race, and about having your voice being heard. So this I've often used as mechanisms in the talking circle. So let me know if you want more information about that. I know there's just a lot of information that I'm sort of throwing at you, but it's all, yeah, I just wanted to show you that. This is a poem. And then one more mechanism of actually synchronous or asynchronous learning is called a cyber taco by QCraft, which is a great organization doing online work right now. And this is a mechanism where you actually have one student type here, hello, you know, they type their thoughts, and then you actually create a slide for each student. And then the second student then will reply to the first student, and the third student might reply to the first or second student. So you actually build collaboration while writing online. Yeah, and then the end of the slideshow, I just wanted to show that at the bottom of the slideshow, throughout the session, you're welcome to add any feedback or thoughts on the session over here. There's also a box, well, this is about how you make a Bitmoji classroom, but there's a box for questions and email. So feel free to fill in thoughts throughout. Yeah, so basically that's a lot of info, but I actually just wanted to give you the slide. Everything that I did in there was by research. How do you make a Google Classroom? How do you use QCraft? What are you doing? Like I didn't go to a workshop for any of these things. This was just me and late nights and overexcitement, overdrive, okay? So I wanted to share it with you. Please hit me up with the email if you want to know anything, or how to do any of those things and how to use them strategically in your classroom. Happy to help you through those. Okay, so it is now time to hand the mic over to Andy and Priya. Thanks for joining us. I'm so excited to hear more about your organization, Amani Project, and for all of us to hear about your work. Take it away.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you, Katie, for such an incredible introduction. And also, it's been a really fun period of time being able to collaborate with your class, Monique, and also just have beginning conversations with Katie about how much we overlap. I'm Andy. I'm the Director of Programs for Amani Project.
And I'm Priya. I'm the Director of Evaluation and Learning for Amani Project.
I also see Eric Gregory, and if that's the same Eric Gregory, that's our Executive Director hiding somewhere in this call too. So he might.
It is the same Eric, yes.
All right, perfect. Hi, Eric. So yeah, Monique asked us to, and Katie asked us to kind of share what Amani Project is, and how we're adapting to the post-COVID world, especially with the hyper-focus on needing to create online content. And so I'm gonna actually share my screen. And I know we've had a lot of folks have had a lot of information overload, kind of like drinking water from a fire hose today. So again, all of this, just take what hits you and let everything else flow off. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. So as a brief background, Amani Project, we are a family of local organizations around the world. working with young people, primarily in the early adolescence age, to use music making, instrument making, and emotional learning through a do-it-yourself curriculum to become more connected to themselves, others, and their communities. And so before coronavirus, we had clubs in or out of school in 5 countries. We had about 140 clubs and about 12,000 kids involved. And they would meet on average once a week to get together, make instruments using found objects, work on songwriting, work on using their emotions or understanding, labeling, and recognizing their emotions to inform how they navigate the world. All that to say, post-COVID, all of our partners are now in the same boat that we are here in the US, where it's all physical distancing, clubs aren't happening. So we're all scrambling to figure out how best to reach all of the young people that we were working with before. Our initial attempt at adapting our curriculum that was used in the clubs to the online world is on the screen right here. And I think it'd be best to walk through just a brief overview of what the young people can access now, but with the understanding that not equitable access curriculum. This requires internet connection, constant ability to get on when you need to, and then even potentially printing. And so we're working in the background with all of our partners to develop an equitable access asynchronistic learning environment where we're going to be using radio, WhatsApp, Zoom sessions that are recorded and then posted on YouTube, all of the different ways that we can reach as many young people, no matter their access to technology.
Yeah, and we're really relying on the community-based organizations and their relationships with the young people that they work with to know what's best and what methods are going to be most effective in reaching the populations they work with. So
as a foundation for what we're adapting, we are not actually changing too much of the curriculum you see here. The titles of each of the activities or projects that the young people work on are listed here, and you can read them as I talk, but
zoom in a little bit.
Let me see can everybody kind of see that okay? Whoa, there we go, that's a little better.
You should be looking at a badge card or a form of a choice board that has 4 levels of activities, and in each level there are 6 different activities.
And initially when we designed the curriculum, we designed it with the choose your own adventure style in mind, where young people could choose whichever activity they wanted to start with, and as long as they completed all 6, they could finish that level. What we soon realized was that we needed to build in a scaffolded way for a lot of the concepts in both emotional learning and music making in order to achieve this. So we started becoming a little bit more prescriptive. And what we found, though, was that most of the kids did not actually like or choose to complete these activities on their own. They preferred to work in cohorts or as a group.
And they might, as they work through the different levels, choose to do activities independently. But for now, what we're really finding from our progress reports and from the feedback from our partners is that the young people really wanted to work as a group. They didn't want to go fast through the activities. They wanted to do it as a group and really understand each activity and really do it thoroughly. So that was really a cool finding for us. And
it's going to inform us as we develop this new asynchronistic economy of our ecosystem. We're going to be joined by our 3-year-old daughter here.
Oh my gosh, this is small.
Okay, mommy's going to fix it while daddy talks. So Anjali just went off screen. So what we, and just to speak a little bit about how we've integrated emotional learning into the music making. One, we use a tool called the Mood Meter from Yale, which helps young people establish a common language about how they're feeling. Emotion words are very difficult to figure out how to choose which emotion word fits our feelings best. So we've really loved the color, the way that the colors can be used to describe emotions and the energy levels that that tool uses. It also helps the young people when they're composing music on their own, to figure out how they want their song to feel. How do they want their song? Do they want high tempo? I mean, a fast tempo, slow tempo? So throughout.
And did you also mention that it brings focus and attention to the fact that all emotions are important, that all emotions have a purpose, and we're not always aiming for feeling super happy all the time. Mm-hmm. We deserve to recognize where we are and to be able to decide, well, do I want to stay there or do I want to shift my emotion, and what are some tools I have to shift if I want to shift?
Right, right. So just to give you kind of a overview of what it looks like, young people right now, they can, you know, if they have access to a printer, they can cut out these circles as they complete the projects and kind of track their progress in an analog way. It's kind of a little bit more old school than even that Bitmoji classroom, which is really cool. The instruction cards, just to give you an overview of what they kind of look like, we start out always by what we believe. And some of the most important values to us at Amani Project is that everyone can make music. It's universal, however, it's expressed and made in a very local way. And so we really encourage young people to learn music that is important to them in the way that's important to them. And so all of these right now are available for young people or mentors to download. We're working with our
the first level of 6 activities.
We're working with our partners, like I said, to develop a completely mixed platform learning ecosystem where if young person does not have access to internet or reliable access, but they do have access maybe once a week to their uncle or aunt's smartphone, we can work with their family to send WhatsApp lessons or activities that can then be done, and then working with mentors in the community to be able to, from a physically distant way, go and help that young person record their projects and share it with other members around their community. We've also been working with our partners about how radio is actually one of the most effective ways of reaching young people that don't have access to any internet or smartphone. They do have access usually to a radio. So working with local radio stations to dedicate a regular time to having a young person have some guidance on working through whatever these projects are that they might be working on, maybe featuring a young person, you know, for about 1 week on their work that they're doing. So those are ideas that we're working on how to, and these all come from our community-based partners.
Right, this takes a lot of work on the part of our community-based organizations that have known these young people that they're working with for a long time, that they've established a considerable amount of trust with, and have, as you know, anyone who's teaching right now has done a lot of this work in reaching out to their families and connecting to see what's best for the young people they work with. So that's really one of the biggest challenges is knowing your audience and knowing the young people you work with, and then the rest, you know, it can be a little bit more flexible as you figure out what works best.
Exactly. And in the brief time we have left too, I just wanted to show you an example of, this is some of our clubs in Tanzania helped us make these do-it-yourself instrument guides. And these are stuff that we're also passing out through WhatsApp, through YouTube, through tutorials, and all the different ways where young people who don't have their own instruments can make their own instruments using found objects, and then continue their musical progress using stuff that they made themselves. So I think that's just a bit of a really fast overview of who we are and how we've kind of integrated choice and choice boards into our curriculum. But we'd love to
hear your questions. There may already be some questions.
Let me stop share here.
Chat.
Let's see here. Oh yes, definitely you can use the mood meter slide that Monique had on there for sure. Yale has been very kind. Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. We've partnered with one of the directors there, Dina Simmons, who's really been influential in guiding our curriculum development and integrating social and emotional learning into an equity context. They've given us permission to use the mood meter free of charge. So I'm going to pass it on to you. And then, not me, they are going to. And then.
Yes, we do have this in Spanish. We have this in Spanish and in
Swahili, in Hindi.
Oh, Hindi. Oh, great.
And I think we have it in Setswana in South Africa.
And Indonesia. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Eric. What?
And yes, it's Setswana as well in South Africa.
And we're working on Indonesian and Italian, I think.
And
as well.
Those are the two, yeah.
The Spanish versions that we had, initially we translated the curriculum into Spanish for our partners in Colombia. And then we sent that version to our partners in Puerto Rico because of course they have different words, different phrases that are best used for the young people that they're working with. And so we have a version, and it's also, we're happy for it to be adapted to fit the needs of the population.
Definitely. How much time did it take to formulate this entire curriculum? So that is a hard question because
it's ongoing.
Yeah, we started in 2017 and developed an idea of the curriculum. We then went to our community-based partners and said, help us put flesh to this, I guess. And it was a really weird way of saying that, but help us flesh this out for your communities. That process took another year to get to the current version we have now. What we realized, there's a lot of learnings just because we always want to be responsive to both the cultures that we're working in, the local communities that we're working in, and also our own learning as an organization. What we're moving into now and going to be creating new curriculum around is beyond just social and emotional learning and music making. How do we take that into a context of structural inequality, power dynamics and politics in each setting around the world to help young people feel like they belong and feel like they have a platform to be heard.
And belong within themselves, within their peer group, and then within their community, their larger community, whether that be local or global community.
Yeah, and so we're moving into a kind of a social empathy framework and equity focus, yeah. Yeah, so age range, we initially focused, that is a great question. We initially focused this on early adolescent age range because that was one of the most influential times in life where you're trying to figure yourself out and how yourself is defined within community. Yeah.
And take healthy risks and figure out where you stand in the world.
But the age range for our participants is anywhere from 5 years old to 20 years old. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, initially we did not design this curriculum for a 5-year-old.
Or a 20-year-old.
Or a 20-year-old. However, that's what ended up that's what the need was. There were 5-year-olds in rural schools in Colombia, in classrooms where the average age was 11. And they needed something to do too. So there are many parts of these activities that can be adapted for a 5-year-old. And in fact, we've been working with another organization, Think Equal, to figure out how we can create something too that truly focuses on that early education age group.
I want to be cognizant of time because I'm really excited about Matthew. But I would love to take more questions later if that is possible. But first, I want to make sure there's time for Matthew to share with what he's sharing as well.
Thanks for that, Andy and Priya. And we actually have about like 6-7 minutes left of your segment. So I have a question or two for you, which might be helpful for our Sistema field, if that's okay. So for those of us who are in our Sistema programs, so something to note that might be a little different is that predominantly in our Sistema programs, there's sort of instrumental music, choral music. There's some sort of general music and general education, which is sort of teaching the elements of music or whatever you're sort of doing in that realm. What's maybe different about the Amani Project, this is almost a step before that, I would say. That's the way I've been viewing it. Yep. So Andy and Priya, can you speak to that a bit and speak to also the SEL component, where in your choice board do we actually see those? What does that then look like?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll discuss the musical instruments. Yeah. To talk about the musical instruments, we're mostly, I wouldn't say we're focused on percussion instruments, but that ends up being, percussion instruments are the instruments that the young people can more readily or easily make. And one of our, and I don't know if you want to go back to, we can share the choice board, My Amani Journey, that's what we call it, our badge card. But anyway, one of the activities is make your own instrument. And I mean, we are always surprised at the creativity in any place we go of the instruments that are created. Yeah. We find that making a percussion instrument is a little bit more accessible. It's also more economically accessible to make. And so it's also something that is in our instrument circles that we do with our facilitators do with the young people. It's something that, you know, they can all grab one, they can have it around the circle, they can all establish themselves and play their instruments proudly, even within one of the first club sessions. Yeah. But it's not just percussion instruments, it's just that's usually where we start from. Yeah. And then
from an approach standpoint, we wanted to make sure that our core value is music is universal, right, but it's spoken differently in each community. And so we wanted to create a program where local teaching artists can actually come in and take the young people on a musical journey as far as their, you know, what is considered rigor there, what is considered technical components of local music. We wanted them to be able to take that on while providing a foundation of how to, you know, make music using objects found in your community. So we actually, our curriculum doesn't take young people very far in the musical pedagogy on purpose. Our teaching artists come in and add that on top of the curriculum as an activity during the club hour. And so a lot of songwriting though.
Right, we do cover the 5 elements of music. Sure. And I mean, I'll let you pull that down.
Yeah, well, that's a debate. We universally, what are the 5 elements of music? We don't.
This is very difficult.
Yeah, so we just
boil down, but to give the young people a common language, somewhere to start. Yeah. We do have an activity that just reviews the 5 elements of music with them, so they feel like they have something to use when they go into writing their song. Right. They have some decisions to make about tempo and beat and dynamics, yeah, and pitch. To start. And so with social and emotional learning, you know, that comes in from the very beginning as well. But I would say that the activities in level 1 that really focus on the social and emotional learning piece directly are the teach the mood meter, writing an empathy story, and then I mean, any time we're writing a song, creating a song, we're asking questions about, you know, the emotions behind
what you're writing,
what you're listening to. Right. And how what you're trying to express emotionally, how that might be different from how your song or your musical creation is being interpreted. Yeah. So that's those are real aha moments when the children can see that, you know, that, oh, maybe this music, this makes me feel this way, but that might not be
what the audience feels.
Universal, or maybe, and it kind of changes with every time they play.
And
they play it.
Adding on to that too, we've woven social and emotional learning into every activity. So making an instrument is an incredibly frustrating, it can be an incredibly frustrating task with lots of unpleasant emotions associated because of the likelihood that it's not going to be the perfect instrument the first time you make it. So that's why within the curriculum, we work on identifying our emotions, being able to understand what you're feeling when you're doing any of these activities, being able to label it using the mood meter tool of just, I feel in the red, which means I'm feeling high energy and unpleasant feelings. Mm-hmm. And then working through, okay, how do I want to stay there to continue making my instrument, or do I want to shift into another color emotionally to finish making my instrument? And so it's woven throughout growth mindset, you know, realizing that I have to continue trying to make this instrument, but I also might need to learn new strategies of how to make it better. So those are all emotional, social and emotional learnings that we've purposely focused on within every activity surrounding music. Does that answer your question, Monique?
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And I see we have 2 questions in the chat box. The first one was about by Hugo, just about parent participation. What does this look like for 6 to 11-year-olds? And the second question is about creative youth development. And sort of, is this educational philosophy or curriculum? How does that filter in?
Definitely. So the younger participants, 6 to 11, we definitely, even beyond 6 to 11, our value is helping young people connect, right, with themselves, with others, and with their community. So family, whatever that is, that
That's
young
part
person,
of their community.
yeah, whatever that young person defines as family is their community, and we want to involve them not just from a permissive standpoint, but from a complete involvement standpoint. So
though it's not absolutely necessary,
it's not, no.
that parents are involved, that guardians are involved. However, that's a hopeful goal.
Yeah.
That what the child is learning and what they're exploring in their Amani Club or their online Amani Club, that they're taking to the communities that they can connect with, or that they can connect with right now.
What we found is that initially, of course, there's in every community, there's some understandable and good skepticism that parents feel about any new program. And so luckily, we by design are partnering with local organizations that already have relationships with family members in the community. And so this is not Amani Project coming in as a new program. It's a local organization adopting and becoming an Amani Project site. And so that is the only way. Which has been
critical to
the only way
our
it
success.
works. Yeah, the only way it works. So CYD for sure. So we started the Amani Project 2017, had no idea about the CYD movement, but once we did, it really helped us refine how we talk about what we're after. Because with these kinds of programs, it's a whole child outcome. You're not just looking at one aspect of education or emotions or this or that. It's everything. So we're really after healthy or positive youth development through the creative arts. And
yeah,
so
I was going to say positive youth development was the framework we were using, which is, you know, something that I had been hearing about like for a very, very long time, and critical to healthy adolescent development, especially. And so there are quite a few evaluation tools within this framework to help measure the constructs in this framework. And creative youth development is positive youth development or healthy youth development with that creative lens. So it was so exciting to find, and it's you know, we've been able to, we'd already created our logic model and found that, you know, the theory of change, the creative youth development's theory of change, from like finding connections within and then connections between someone and a peer or one other person, and then of course the larger community, just fit very nicely into exactly what we were looking to do.
Yeah. Yep.
You're all part
Wonderful.
of it.
Thank you so much, Andy and Priya, for this. And maybe I just want to pull out 2 thoughts. Is that the reason why I really love the Amani Project, and I feel like there's so much potential for the Amani Project and our field, you know, to work alongside each other, is because their focus is so much on the community in terms of assets-based community development, where they literally pull in teaching artists from the community. So these students around the world are being taught by, I would say, often people who very much look like or come from a similar, if not the same, culture to them. So this is a dynamic component that we actually haven't yet explored enough in our system of field. This is why I'm excited about your project. So thanks for joining us. And before I hand over to Matthew, a quick note about choice boards. Hey, Matthew. So a quick note about choice boards, that I did a choice board project with my group of students in the MAT program. Of course, they're adults, but it was so simple, you know. So I actually did 6 blocks, and that they had to do an artivism project. So it was art plus activism, and each block contained one thing they could do. So they could write a song, they could do a slam poetry, they could make a book in Book Creator. They could make like a little comic strip. So I actually so it could be as simple as sort of using the levels similar to the Amani Project, or maybe reaching out to Andy and Priya if you want to use some of their stuff and collaborating that way. But it could also just be making your 6 blocks and giving your kids choices and having them start at any access point, whether you want them to do all or just one. Yeah. So this notion of a choice board is so expansive and so exciting.
I just wanted to add to that. Thanks, Monique. We are very excited about any potentials of partnering with El Sistema inspired programs, as far as like maybe infusing some of the Amani or all the Amani into the existing program that you all have. So we are very excited and open to partnering and collaborating. We're all about building this community together. So please feel free to reach out. Our contact info is on the website, or Monique will share it later as well.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks for that. Looking forward to that. Okay, Matthew, I'm so excited for us to hear about the cool things that you do. So take the mic.
Thanks, Monique. And this was my Quaker way of saying thank you to Andrew and Priya. So we do silent Quaker claps. So thank you. It works really well on Zoom too, because you can show your thanks that way really easily. But that was lovely. And I think there's a lot of connections to what I'll be sharing. So Monique's really put together a lovely program for everyone. But hi there, I'm Matthew Stensrud. I'm a music teacher. I teach PK through 4th grade currently at Sidwell Friends School in Washington, DC. I actually have some connections with El Sistema as well, because I live in Alexandria, and the Alexandria Symphony Orchestra partners with the public schools for an amazing El Sistema program that actually is deeply connected to Orff Schulwerk through the John Adams School. So I think that El Sistema and Orff Schulwerk have a lot of amazing possibilities and connections there in the way that we teach, and the power of exploration and curiosity and creativity and community that we empower through our learning with our students. So it's nice to share that community with you all today. But because I think we spent so much time thinking about SEL, I wanted to mention these mindful kid cards if no one has seen them before, and thought perhaps we could start with the reflection pond. So if you would, for a moment, just sit mindfully with your spine straight and body relaxed. And I'm going to put on some music, kind of a nice little break, I think, halfway through our Zoom session. Hopefully you can hear the music. Excellent. Close your eyes and take 3 soft, slow, mindful breaths with me. Imagine you're in a forest with tall trees. You hear the birds chirping and squirrels running across fallen leaves on the ground. You walk up to a small pond and sit beside it. The water is still. You look deep into the pond. You see the reflection of the trees on the water. You see the reflection of your face. But as you look deeper, you see a few other things too. Perhaps you see some things that make you a little stressed. Perhaps you see some things that make you feel a little sad. And that's okay. So you gently pick up a rock and toss it into the pond. As those images ripple away. And some new images appear. Some reflections that bring you happiness. Some reflections that bring you hope. And you dip your hands into that cool water so you can feel those reflections in your body. And slowly, those images, those reflections drift away. pond is still again. And you breathe with me 3 times. And when you're ready, you open your eyes. Okay, so hopefully that was a nice little moment. But I think what's also powerful about these cards, especially in our virtual learning environment, is how powerful they can be with our students. So I've used them in the classroom before, along with the yoga pretzel cards that I also have up here, and have found these to be even more powerful in distance learning, and even more powerful the past few weeks. As students have needed time to reflect upon the stress and the sadness that they might be feeling, how powerful this can be. So even with kindergartners, we spend a minute or 2 exploring this. It helps center ourselves for the class. And with our older kids, perhaps we even spend a few moments talking about it. What were the things that you were thinking about that you would like to share? And that can be really helpful for our students to kind of help process everything that's going on right now. So, well, with that, we can hop right in because we have a lot of exciting things to explore today. Just gonna get my sharing set. Okay. So we're talking a little bit about asynchronous learning. Monique and I met because I've been making a lot of videos for my students. I've been teaching both synchronously and asynchronously, and I found they both have a lot of different benefits when we're working with our students. But a little bit about me. It's my first year at Sidwell Friends, which is a Quaker school. And because of that, I did not teach the Obamas. They were long gone out of the lower school by the time I got there. But my predecessor did, and she shared all sorts of interesting Secret Service stories. So that's definitely the most, I think, exciting thing that, that happened when they were there. I am not a professional dancer, but I dance all the time and infuse movement into all of my teaching. And Orff Schulwerk really believes that music and movement are interconnected and are constantly happening in the classroom. Another thing to think about, and I think that's true for a lot of us teachers, is that we never teach lessons the same. We might come into the classroom with an idea, but we feed off of the students and use the exciting energy they bring and the ideas that they share to then weave a new lesson. So we need to remind ourselves of that, because sometimes we might be worried about the content that we need to teach or the curriculum or an assessment, but instead we should let the students truly be the guide. So if they have ideas and that means you didn't get to the important, test you felt like you had to get to that day, that's okay. In fact, I think that's best. I think that's what our students need. So with that, some essentials I just always like to think about as we get started, if you want to take a moment to read them to yourself. If you would like, you can share in the chat and I'll keep track of that, any things that's coming up. And I'll have some particular questions I'm going to ask you to use the chat feature in a moment. So with that, I'm curious, perhaps, what kind of successes we've had with asynchronous learning. And it could be, perhaps, we haven't explored asynchronous learning at all yet, and that's okay too. But if you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat a few things, that would definitely be helpful for me as we continue this conversation together. And as people are sharing some of their successes in the chat, another thing to think about is a challenge. What has been a difficulty you've had as you've been preparing videos for your students? Are you able to get feedback from them in another platform or not? And then how does that impact what you're teaching? think there's some interesting things people are sharing that if a student's at home, perhaps they feel unencumbered with sharing different things, especially when it comes to movement. And I've definitely seen that too, when the students are sharing feedback through Flipgrid or Seesaw or another platform, that they, are at home in their space that's very comfortable for them. So they might take a few more risks. But sometimes the inverse can also be true, where I've done Zoom classes where students really don't want to take risks and they'll just want to sit there and watch like it's television. So there's definitely pros and cons to all of the scenarios that we're thinking of today. Either way, we want to keep these challenges and hopes present within ourselves during our time together. And if that means it bubbles up questions, I have the chat on the corner of my screen here, so I'm going to keep track of it. So my teaching revolves around the idea of creativity and community with our students. And the two things that have truly become part of me and have influenced me immensely are Responsive Classroom and Orff Schulwerk. And both of them embrace the idea that how we teach our students and how we interact with our students, the social curriculum, is just as important as the content curriculum or the academic side of things. And that we should be constantly balancing both in the classroom to truly create a culturally responsive, welcoming space for our students. So some considerations to think about when you're making your videos. I'll start with some simple things perhaps you've already thought about. The classroom behind me is the space that I spend all of my time now, and it's my basement. So you'll see I brought some posters home, and all of the instruments behind me are things that were in my classroom. So the students are having some comfort in the familiar when they're on Zoom with me or when they're watching the videos with me. I also wanted to bring home things that made it easier for me to teach as well, including all of these books that I'll be talking about later. It doesn't matter that I have my barbells like literally right off the side of the screen. What matters is what I have in the screen itself. So keep that in mind when you're making your videos. I also have a ring light that is behind my laptop here. So if you don't have a ring light, you could set up a lamp or some sort so there's always light projected upon you. And that's really important to make your video just a little more professional. And believe it or not, I think it impacts whether the students watch it because they watch TV all the time. They're looking for things that look, if they can't really see you, they're gonna move on to something else. Some video tips to consider. The process that I have found that has worked well is that I put my phone in airplane mode and then record it on my phone and then airdrop it to my laptop. I have a tripod where I have my ring light and that's set up. Another option you could consider is using Loom, which is a free app that you can download onto your computer and record directly. So you can either have your computer screen showing with a little circle of you in the corner, or you could have your entire screen without your picture, or you could have just you. So those are the two options I recommend. The thing to think about though is I mentioned airplane mode because if you receive a phone call when you're recording and you don't know it, then you lose the whole recording. And that did happen to me. So I don't want it to happen to you. The same thing's going to be the case if you have any sort of notifications that come on your computer. Those notifications are going to then be there and those alerts are going to sound when you're recording. So you're going to want to turn off all sorts of things that could come up on your computer screen. So it's always something to think about. I always start and end the video with the same thing, and that's really helpful for editing purposes. So once I get settled, I sit and I smile and I wave, and then I begin. And then when I go into iMovie to edit, I know that once I start waving, I can split the clip right there and I'm set. The next thing to think about is the idea that making mistakes is possible and it's going to happen. And actually it's really fun. I know too many of my colleagues that will record themselves making a lesson 10 times because they wanted it to be perfect. But we don't have that opportunity in the classroom. The first time is not perfect. And I think it's okay. Plus it's less stressful for us. So when I was teaching a video lesson and I knocked into this piano and the books fell over, I just kept it in. And my students probably loved it. But I also knew that I had a good lesson going and I wasn't going to have to re-record the entire lesson because of that mistake, quote unquote mistake. So I really encourage you that if you trip over your words in a video lesson to continue on because that's what the classroom is like. And I think the students don't necessarily want to see perfection. That isn't what we should be teaching them. That then when they send a video back to you via Flipgrid, if it's not perfect, they have to re-record it. So be comfortable with those mistakes that you make. The last tip I would give is if you think a little bit about Mr. Rogers, he asks questions in his TV show and lets the students answer, lets the kids answer as if they were there with him, and responds as if they gave a response. So when we watch a little bit of a video that I've made, you'll see that I do the same thing. And it's going to encourage the students to interact with your videos. So, and what's special about that is I've even had parents send me videos of their kids watching a video of mine, and you'll see the kids like yelling at the iPad, which I think is awesome. That's exactly what we want. We want them to be making the music when we ask them to. And by asking those questions and starting to make sure you have this kind of call and response feel with them, I think is really, really exciting. So what does this look like? The template I have found that's worked well for about a 10-minute lesson is to start off with a song or activity that's familiar to the students, and then take a little break for a 30-second to 45-second dance session to get the wiggles out. And then go into a new activity, and then end that with a extension, which is what I call a what if question that leads to what the students are going to be exploring elsewhere. Now, perhaps they're making videos to send back to you. Maybe they're not. Either way, we still want them to explore. So if I'm doing a lesson where I'm using beanbags and playing with the beanbags, and I'm going to encourage them, what can you find that's like a beanbag that you can make these patterns with at home? Go explore right now and see what you can make. And that might be how my video ends. So that way the students are encouraged right away to go and explore something off the screen. And I find that to be a powerful way to end a lesson. So what exactly does this look like? I'll give you a little insight into kind of what the video looks like, and then share out some things within the chat while you're watching or after. And I know it's in Zoom, so I've tried to optimize the video clip. I pressed that checkbox button, so I'm hopeful that it'll look okay on your end. Hello, first grade. It is good to see you. Welcome, first grade, to my new music room. I hope you like it, and I'm excited that you're here to spend some time with me. What are some things you noticed that are similar or different to our normal music room? Oh, that's interesting, and not something I've really thought of before. Well, you'll be excited to know we're going to be using a lot of these fun instruments and other toys and activities during our time together. First, let's start with the song. Bim bam, razzmatazz, tish tosh, wally woo woo. Bim bam, razzmatazz, tish tosh, wally woo woo. So I'll pause it there for a moment and see what kinds of things you already might have noticed. The song continues, but it's a song the students know and they're comfortable with. Just to give you a heads up on that. It's something they've learned in the classroom with me before. Also, if people don't want to use the chat and they want to unmute themselves and share, that's absolutely fine too.
I see a question. Oops. by Ben. Do you have any way to tell level of engagement from students?
When we're making videos, not really. I do always have an activity in Seesaw through my school. So if the students are doing the activity, then I know that they've watched the video lesson to really, to follow it correctly. But there is really no way for us to be sure the students are watching. I would hear from parents that sometimes the kindergartners will watch the video 4 times because they were having fun, so I think that's the feedback we want to get, is just kind of doing check-ins with families to see how it's going. If you make your videos unlisted on YouTube like I do, you could track the views. That could also be another thing to consider. You could see which videos are being watched more than others, and that could be something else that's possible. Okay, so this is going to take us to another part in the lesson. I'm going to head to the dance party and what comes after that. Oh, phew. That was exhausting. I'm so glad that you could dance with me. Now, I wonder if we could sing something together. Do you know this song? Does anyone know the song? If you said Little Johnny Brown, wow, you're right. You could tell just by listening to it. Little Johnny Brown, lay your comfort down. Little Johnny Brown, lay your comfort down. Now, for us to do that song together, I need your help. I have a scarf. Do you have a scarf? Or maybe you have a blanket, or maybe you have a towel, or maybe you have a sweater. That could work. That's about this big maybe, and about a square in a shape. Do you think you could find one? Press pause right now and bring one back. Did you find one? I sure hope so. Okay, let's get it ready. It's so big. Wow, beautiful too. Okay. You'll notice, friends, that sometimes I sing in my first grade voice and other times I sing in my lower voice. Make sure that you always sing in your beautiful, light first grade voice. Little Johnny Brown, lay your comfort down. Little Johnny Brown, lay your comfort down. And fold another corner, Johnny. 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 And we can make a motion, 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 Johnny. Little Johnny Brown. Okay, I think we get the idea. Watching myself dancing is only a little bit embarrassing. Okay, but I think perhaps what some things you might have noticed, if you want to share them in the chat, but some things would be that there's not a lot of explanation time. It's mostly doing time, right? Going straight into the activity, but doing some of the same things the kids would do. the kids take forever to lay out those scarves. So I'm going to do it too, and I'm going to touch it and play with it. Ooh, it's really pretty. Oh, I love my color, because those are the things the kids are saying in the classroom when they're playing with their scarves. And then making motions in between. So it's the song Little Johnny Brown, a fun little play party, and kind of in the jazz inflection, because it's in a kind of minor mode you might have noticed, but still in pentatonic as well. And so it's perfect for first grade to sing. And if I was doing it in the classroom, I would add drums, I'd play it on the piano. But with the students, the goal would be for them to make their own motion. So at the end, I'd say, I wonder if you could make your own motions. Can you sing the song and make your own motion? And then back in Flipgrid, the students have these blankets they've laid out, and they sing the song, and then in between they do their own motions. And that's it, which is great to see kind of what they've sent, you know, what they could do at home. The other great thing about it is that they could use any material they want. They could use a blanket, they could use a t-shirt, they could use anything they have at their disposal, a napkin. So whenever we're thinking about found sounds or found instruments or other found things, we want to just keep it as open-ended as possible. So then that way I'm not being specific and saying, well, if you don't have a scarf, you can't do this, because that's not going to be successful for our students. So some interesting things I hope to see with that lesson, kind of what that looks like for our students. I saw some questions. Again, I can't really say how many students watch the entire video. I'll never really know. But for this activity, it was really cool to see the amazing videos they sent back. So that was really fun. At my school, each student was sent home with an iPad, so they could easily watch the videos. They would input into Seesaw, which is an app, or Flipgrid, which is an app. So we had that accessibility issue covered, but that's not always going to be the case for other people. So you need to keep that in mind as well. But the nice thing about both Seesaw and Flipgrid is that you can set up free accounts. Of course, there's additional features on Seesaw if you pay for it, but they are free to set up. Okay. So again, this is kind of like a reflection back on what we've just learned. So the song at the beginning, repetition is the most important. It makes our students feel comfortable, but then we can start to varying it by changing the tempo, by adding motions, by exploring dynamics, by adding a prop. So with Little Johnny Brown, I did the same thing. I sang the song, then I changed my motions. Then I changed by adding the prop. So I'm kind of varying the activity to keep a student interest, but I'm constantly repeating the material so they can learn it. And then again, the extension question at the end. With my older kids, it might be recorder. What if you could play this poem on the recorder, but you can choose your own notes between E, G, and A. So I give them some guidelines, but they can choose the melody or something like that. And then when I share it with my students in a Google slide, it looks like this. There's 3 slides in a template that I've put together, so it's very easy to set up. I have a message at the beginning that welcomes them. I have the video that I've embedded into the Google slide, which you can use by inserting the URL. And then the extension question is reinforced on the slide afterward. That encourages them to go somewhere, to do something. This one is a Peter and the Wolf example, as you'll see, because we did that in 2nd grade back in March, where students could share their knowledge about the instrument families after watching the lesson. Any other thoughts coming to mind right now? I see a question about a supply list. I did not send home a supply list. I made sure that all of my 3rd and 4th graders had recorders before we started our distance learning. Otherwise, we were just going to use found instruments and found sounds. You could absolutely put instrument packs together. I know some companies like West Music and elsewhere are putting together instrument packs too that you can send home, but I also know that that's costly. So I'm definitely encouraging you to try things that students might already have in their space. For example, instead of bean bags, which I could use for rhythms, I'll give you a little tidbit, a little show right now. So if I'm making a video and I would just move it down here and I'd have the students say ta, 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 ta. And then here they would say ta, 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 ti, ta. Ta, ti, ta, ta-ti-ta. So I'm exploring rhythms with objects. Well, what else could you find? So the students are going to send back a picture like this, because they have shoes at home, right? And they're going to go ta, 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 rest, ta, rest, ta, rest. And there, they just made a 30-second flip grid for you that's showing that they can make these rhythms just with things they found at home. So really, and broaden the creativity aspect of that. And it's actually been really neat. A video one kid sent, they went outside with their lawn chairs and he was like throwing the lawn chairs around to make different piles. And he's like, okay, now it's tati, tati, rest, rest. Or, okay, now it's, and he would run and move them. And it was really, really fun. Another student made like a 16-beat pattern of all these different stuffed animals. And they just like scrolled the camera around their entire bedroom as they kept saying the pattern everywhere. And these were not ideas I gave them, right? They came up with this on their own because I just said, what if you could find something at home to make your own pattern? And I've set up ta, quarter note, ta-ti, which are 2/8 notes, and rest. And you could say ti-ti, you could say do-day, you could say whatever you like, but those are just the ones that I use. And then set them free. So I think it's really cool to explore that with the kids. Anyway, I got a little excited about that. Next, I know we only have a few short minutes left, so I want to talk with you about ensuring that we offer both windows and mirrors for our students. The power of books is really how this comes to life, right? Because each of us are coming from our own positionality. I am a white, gay male, so I can offer that perspective in my classroom authentically, but other perspectives I cannot offer as authentically. So if I offer my positionality as that, and then use a storybook to provide other mirrors for students, how powerful is that? And them to see you embrace that is so important. Okay. So I just briefly wanted to show you a power of what a book could be. This is the book Wave by Susie Lee, who's a South Korean author. Consider the feelings of each of these pictures. So a word could be curious. A word could be playful. That's a fun one. So the first thing I've asked the students to do is to think about the feelings of each of these pictures. And there are some beautiful images here. Just stunning, as you can see. The wave always wins, okay. And then what if your face could show the feelings? And the students are gonna explore with that. The students are gonna explore their face with this feeling or this feeling. They always love that one, they get to stick their tongue out. Create with your body the movement word that comes to mind with each of these feelings. So they might say lean. I have locomotor, non-locomotor words my students already know. So they know to lean in would be a word they would have. Maybe this is kick or flip or flick. Each of those could be movement words. Here's another fun one. So, and then they're encouraged to use those words to make something to share back. And I've used the story to kind of get to that place instead of just having them, okay, let's try this word, without having that hook to draw them in. Yeah? So I think that's really powerful. As a whole, we should always be opening windows and doors for our students, and then simultaneously ensuring that we have mirrors that reach every student's unique life experiences. So how can we do that? I have a few lists here, so I'm going to share this Google Slides with you. These are amazing ways to ensure that you have wonderful books in the classroom. And these are resources that teachers have put together. So here's one topical book list that includes all of these different culturally responsive aspects of our teaching, whether it's race and culture or trauma or gender. Some of the other ones I follow some amazing teachers on Instagram, and I would highly suggest you head there if you haven't yet to follow teachers that are sharing amazing materials. So this is another one, and some more, and some more. And then finally, if you're ever looking for something specific, you could head to the Diverse Book Finder, which is a great way for you to start searching for any sort of categories that maybe you're looking for. And you're saying, you know, I've never provided a mirror of Asian Pacific Islander, Asian Americans in my classroom. And if that's something that you're realizing, then this could be a great resource for you to look through this list and see what you might be able to find. So I wanted to share all those things. And I have all of the links listed here. I just mentioned at the bottom, I haven't seen all of the books. So there might be books in there that you find are not great fits. So you really want to explore each of the books on your own to confirm that it's something that you want to share in your classroom. What might that look like? For example, I put together a Pride video of the story This Day in June with my students. So I took this pattern, This Day in June, parade starts soon, and made a little song. This day in June, chanting, cheering everywhere. This day in June, join in the parade. And then we would read a page together. Clad in leather, perfect weather. Artists painting, sisters sainting. This day in June, chanting, cheering everywhere. This day in June, join in the parade. And you've put together a song using a pentatonic scale. Perhaps next you would add body percussion. If you want to, you can follow me. You probably know the melody by now. You're music teachers. So we would go, this day in June, chanting, cheering everywhere. This day in June, join in the parade. So you'll notice the body percussion changes form too, right? A, B, A, C. This day in June, chanting, cheering everywhere. This day in June, join in the parade. So just because the song matches an ABAC elemental form, then we want the body percussion to do the same. You can make ostinati, you could have a xylophone part at the bottom, you could add drums, you could do all sorts of fun things for the students to then add to it. But I always find that using a rondo kind of form where you're coming back to the same song, it's the same idea of repetition, where the part in the middle, where you're reading a different part of the story, dancers jumping, music pumping, sidewalk shaking, tummies aching, with the rhythm. These words are perfect for rhythm, and then going into the song again. We don't have time to watch it, but you can take a look at the video to see how it comes to life. Families at my school submitted videos of themselves dressed up for a pride parade and sent videos in saying different parts of the story. It's beautiful. And then it goes back to the part where I have the xylophone part. And another thing you could consider is using SoundHound. I use, I'm sorry, not SoundHound, SoundTrap. SoundTrap was a great way for me to layer in all of the parts, a xylophone part, and then I recorded myself playing the drums. And then I recorded myself playing these other instruments to make something that I could play in a video and it sounds like you're playing all the instruments. A little bit like a cappella, but without the video. So I know I went over all of that super quickly because I realized we were running low on time. So my apologies for that, but I want to make sure that there's at least a few minutes for questions at the end. And then in the slide as well, I have ways that you can stay in touch. You can check out my YouTube page. You can check, I post lessons and ideas on both Instagram and Facebook all the time, and find that they've been really amazing communities with which I learn from, especially the past few weeks when I've been able to learn from my Black colleagues on Instagram that are sharing these amazing resources and stories. And those are things we're looking for right now. And we need to be doing that work. So go out there and do the research and spend time with these links and Google, and that way we can be better teachers for our students. So I'm gonna put a link in the chat for these slides so you can view them on your own. So I'll do that right now.
And Matthew, while you're doing that, I had a question. I saw a question come up multiple times in the chat about Flipgrid. So could you just give a short summary of what Flipgrid is and how you intersect that with your asynchronous videos?
Absolutely. And Flipgrid is not something I used as much as Seesaw. I used Seesaw a lot more with my students. But Flipgrid would be, if I asked the students to share a 1-minute video of them with something, then they can record it on their iPhone or their iPad and then share it into the Flipgrid app right away and post it on this little spot that this page I've made essentially for that activity. And then they can watch each other's. So they can see what someone else in their class shared, which is really amazing. And it truly is that easy. You just upload the video and that's it. There's nothing else special to Flipgrid. So if you're wanting to go beyond video, then it may not be the best option for you. Seesaw might be a better place. And I can at least share super briefly what Seesaw looks like. It's going to look something like this. So you're going to have an activity where I give directions and I have an image of what students are going to do. And then you can even provide a template down here that then students, when they click add response, are given that template. They're given the ability to add in text and etc. to create something. And here they were using those images to create and choose their movement words. Same thing for this melodic line. They could take a picture of something and then play the melodic line, or they could take pictures of their found rhythmic patterns. So I kind of talked about each of those as well. Hopefully that helps.
That's awesome. Okay, I think.
Can you get the link right now?
To your slides. Did you? Oh, great.
Okay, that should be the link.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing with us. I feel so activated right now to create curriculum and teach. It's so fun. So thank you for your engaging presentation. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. And thank you to Andy, Priya, and also Eric, of course, who's here. Thank you so much for sharing about the Amani Project. And I am just so excited about some of these collaborations in the field, and hopefully we can move forward and continue collaboration and continue learning from each other. It's just so much to learn, right? It's so fun. So I invite you to go back to the Google slide from earlier to share any feedback that you'd like to share, any questions. We'd love to hear from you. So anyway, thank you everyone for joining. Thanks, Matthew, Andy, Priya, Eric, and thank you, Katie, for hosting us. Thanks, everyone. Stay well.